Rain dances work 100% of the time, if you dance until it rains. Someone kind of jokingly said this to me recently at an entrepreneur event, and I thought, man, right, I get it, it's clever, but there's actual genius behind that. You tend to get what you're looking for if you don't stop looking. Right? Like you eventually arrive where you need to be if your feet don't stop moving. The question we often find ourselves asking is, did the dance work? But the real question, the question of value, is how long are you willing to dance around that fire? How much of yourself did you put into the pursuit? You know, it's both liberating and terrifying to find out that there is no failure in life. There's simply the permission we give ourselves to move forward. That trajectory we continue on up until we reach a point where we look around and say, no thank you, I'm done. Because if you're moving forward, you haven't failed. You have not lost. If you're moving forward, everything is possible. If you're moving forward, you are creating reality. The question is not, have you failed? The question is, are you still willing to move forward? It's not, did the rain dance bring the rain? It's, were you willing to dance around that fire until the skies opened up? I often think about the Stoic idea that there are things we can control and there are things we can't. And knowing that difference is wisdom. Right? The same idea that has become, as many people know, the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's certainly powerful to understand the difference between what we can control and what we can't, but it's also worth noting that those things we cannot control, even when they seem to make life harder, when they're not what we want, when they're frustrating and difficult and exhausting, they can be brought into your world and leveraged as tools to ultimately get you where you need to go. Slingshot to something better, right? There's value in all of it. And if you're looking at life through the lens of, I'm not stopping until X happens, well, then everything that occurs around you is just a vehicle taking you closer to X. Put simply, you can't always control what happens, but you can always control what you do with what happens. And that's power. That is strength. So, using a tangible, practical example, right around the time COVID emerged in 2020, I was speaking about 5 or 6 times a month. I had video production clients, and my own personal content creation was relatively minimal. And so that hit to our way of life, the one we all endured, took a lot of companies' budgets, right? That uncertainty prevented a lot of people from spending the marketing money they were spending. And on its face, it's a bad thing, right? It took a lot of business from me. But I look back now and I'm like, that pivot, 10x'd, 20x'd my digital footprint. I was able to reach more people from my home studio. I adjusted, right? And that was the beginning of the most important transition of my business. To be honest, perhaps even my life at that point. You can't control a virus. You can't control the public's reaction to it. But you can take the pieces and make something with them. You can dance around that fire until it rains, and dance around it I did. And by the way, so many people I know today did the same thing. Adversity has created more masterpieces, more miracles than calm ever could, because it makes us step back and look at our creation in a new way. Remember, quitting is not something that the external world projects upon you. Quitting is looking around and saying, wow, this is a lot. This is more than I can handle. I'm done. This is the end. I don't want to walk into the storm. I'm not interested in embracing the chaos. And I want to take a second to remind you that if you put your head down and just continuously step into it, if you can remind yourself, I didn't make this situation, but day by day I can make something valuable from it, you're making yourself powerful beyond measure. It's not superhuman strength or some godly intellect that makes the difference at the end of the day. It's a willingness to understand, right? That if you do not stop, if you're willing to adjust and keep moving forward, you become invincible. There's a lot you can't control, but you can control what it all means and how you'll navigate it. That understanding is greatness. So dance around that fire until the rain falls, because if you dance long enough, it surely will. What goes into your decision making? Particularly the big decisions, the important ones. I heard a quote that moved me from Jeff Bezos. It was a video on Twitter, and he said, "My best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart, intuition, and guts, but not analysis." And he continues, "When you can make a decision with analysis, you should do so, but it turns out that in life, your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, and taste." And that connected some dots for me. Right? Because I think the big decisions, the life-altering decisions, where we are pointing the ship, should be made via intuition. Data can't tell you which direction is most important to you. And even if it could, if your heart's not in it, if it's not aligned with who you are and where you feel you need to be, it wouldn't really matter anyway. Like the most important decisions we make, even right out of the gate, there's this feeling of it's aligned or it isn't. We know right away. We feel it right away. Someone once said to me, if you can't decide if something's good or not, flip a coin. Because you'll know while that coin is in the air which side you want it to land on. And we do, we know. And so after deciding, after letting intuition guide us, then and only then, in my humble opinion, of course, do we calculate the how. That's the analysis part. Once we've committed and our hearts are aligned, yeah, you use the data all around you, the evidence collected along the way to map an efficient path. I think people tend to put the heart and the brain against each other as though they're rivals. I know I certainly have, but I think they need to coexist together. Think about it. If you select your North Star based on analysis, you'll probably lack the drive to get there. And conversely, once decided, if you map the course based solely on heart or feel, you'll be operating blind, limiting your ability to make accurate adjustments based on real-life circumstances. You need both. I'm making some pretty substantial changes here in my life. I'm moving again, this time to Arizona, starting up some new ventures, placing myself in a few situations that weren't even on the radar 6 months ago. I can't explain my rationale using mathematical models. Right? I just know deep in my soul that it's where I need to be. It feels right. It's calling me. The same way 10 years ago, writing speeches in a small Boston apartment for no revenue at the time couldn't be explained. Can't show your work on a decision like that, right? It's just something that feels good. And, once you jump in, then yeah, you start relying on the brain, the analysis to grow and improve and evolve. But I do believe if we made the big decisions based only on the things we could prove or the things we were sure of, the biggest and most important leaps would never have been made. Risks wouldn't be taken. I mean, you don't take risks because you run the numbers and the odds work. You take risks because life is, when you break it down, remove the nuance and details, about the journey. It's about the ride. And so you jump. You commit to a path. And maybe you realize it's not the path for you. Let's say things don't work out. Well, now you are gifted that wisdom, understanding you previously never had, right? And you can take that all with you onto the next venture. How do you put a price on that? How do you quantify lessons of that magnitude? What data tells you how important that courage was? We all know the answer. Now, of course, again, data has a story to tell, and numbers don't lie, but they also never tell the whole story. They can't paint the picture in its entirety. Which is why I'd scream from the mountaintops, if it means something to you, it's worth exploration. If it matters, try. If it lights up your curiosity, give it attention. Maybe it doesn't work the way you thought or hoped, but it will lead you to the next thing, and then the next, and the next. It will provide the type of value that simply can't be quantified or even understood in the moment. The story of your life must be written by you. It must align with the person looking back at you in the mirror. That's the litmus test. That's the benchmark. So trust yourself and your intuition to write it. There's an old idea that once you've started, you're halfway there. How does that make sense, one might wonder? Once you've started, you've only just begun. And that's true, technically. But here's the thing. The journey, the ins and outs, ups and downs, trials and tribulations, they can all be dealt with. They knock us down from time to time, no doubt. But we learn, we adjust, and carry on as we move forward. Most success stories, they're crushed, not because of that adversity along the way, but because they never begin. They never take shape or materialize. We can't make them real in our heads. We can't convince ourselves that they'll ever be anything other than fiction. We think that's for someone else. We look around and assume that reality is different than my reality. And overcoming this mental constraint is always the most challenging step. And that saying, the one I continuously find myself coming back to, human beings always follow through on who they believe themselves to be, continues to be true. If you don't believe you're worthy of something, its pursuit is lost before it began. So while the mind tries to paint pictures of how scary that road is ahead, how it's too different or big or complex, understand that should you move forward, you'll find all that complexity can be broken down one day, one situation, one little step at a time. The only real demon here is the possibility of inaction, because you couldn't make yourself believe it. You couldn't see yourself at the top of that mountain. And so, the front door was never opened. Emerson says, hitch your wagon to a star. A beautiful reminder that that star is proof your dreams are real. And only as real as the conviction with which you move towards them. Green light your own glory, your own contentment. Because contrary to what we might think, no one comes up and bestows that upon us. To live life fully is a decision. Decision, Latin root words, cut off. It's removing and abandoning your restraint in order to be more authentically you. In order that you'll give yourself permission to chase down that which makes you feel alive and soak up all that aligns with your heart and soul. Once you start, you're halfway there. And oh, that first step, often perceived as the beginning, but in actuality a point few ever give themselves the luxury of experiencing. Step 1, believe it's possible. Step 2, believe you're worthy. Step 3, go. Everything else works itself out. You're capable of dancing through life's chaos, of managing the world's unknowns. So know that, understand that, but most importantly, be one of the few who gives themselves permission to experience that. And it starts now. Dream, visualize, execute. Dream as in stretch beyond the now. Let your mind wander beyond the confines of what it sees every day. Allow your world to be one not assigned to you, but designed internally and projected out. Visualize. Once you've latched onto something that matters to you, see it. Close your eyes and truly watch it come to life. Nothing's brought into existence without first living in the mind. Nothing is built if not a recreation of an already existing model. The world will act like it's new, but it's not. It's just the first time they've put eyes on it. Lastly, execute. Allow yourself to be the messenger, carrying correspondence from your mind to the space that surrounds you. Transport the brilliance from one world to another. Step by step, day by day. Become the architect that shares new things with the world. Execution is often the difference between I wish and I did. There's a famous story about Jim Carrey and the way he manifested his acting career. First, it was a dream. It was something that pulled him in and that he believed in with all his heart. Second, he visualized. He'd drive around Hollywood at night, after doing the comedy clubs, would park on Mulholland Drive, overlooking the city, and would visualize being a successful actor. Being presented with, the best opportunities, playing the roles, getting the big money. He even went so far as to write himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered. Head in the clouds, feet on the ground principle. Right? Because during this time period, he also worked and practiced and performed like a man on fire. It looks to me, and I'm fairly confident Jim would agree with me, that it was the culmination of these steps that landed him, you guessed it, a $10 million check for, I think it was The Mask, down the road. I think a lot of people misunderstand what the law of attraction truly means. It's not that you close your eyes and what you want appears. It's that it's not possible until you dream it. And it doesn't feel real until you see it. And it doesn't materialize until you build it. These three pillars create space for the evolution of your own personal journey. It's funny, in so many ways, like the little benchmarks I hit in life, they feel special to me, not because of, how they feel in the moment. They don't feel new, but because in a way, I feel like I'm coming back to them. I accepted them as true years ago. Now they're just being realized. The same way a builder agrees to the plans, then proceeds to bring them to life in 3D. When you believe it and see it in your mind, the day-to-day is just essentially making that model 3D. And I'm kind of realizing, as I speak this into existence, that that's what we are. 3D printers, bringing our ambitions, our dreams into existence. If not in your mind, it won't be printed onto the pages of your life. Have you ever wondered how different life would be if you'd chosen another path? If you dreamed a little bigger, closed your eyes and saw something a little different? Well, two things can be true at once here. First, the past is gone and it's not coming back. But second, you have full control of everything that will come to fruition from here. What you dream, what you see, and how you execute will determine what surrounds you when you wake up every morning. So give yourself permission to dream big. Trust yourself to see it when no one else does. And believe in your ability to execute day in and day out. Life will look very different down the road than it does now. But you know that. Because it's already there when you close your eyes. What is the complex but an accumulation of that which is simple? What are big things, if not just a multitude of little things? There's comfort in the understanding that all we have in life, all there is simplicity, easy to understand pieces. It's just that sometimes we stack them so high that they start to take a new shape. But like Greg McCune references in his book Essentialism, the power isn't always in acquiring answers. You already have them. They're in front of you. The power is in cutting away the things that don't need to be there. Removing all that stands between you and your ideal existence. And I think that's one of life's great misunderstandings. We don't need to find more. We need to remove that excess until we're face to face with what matters. And to adopt this principle, it's nothing short of liberating. Chaos, confusion, disorder, they don't imply that you lack the right things. They suggest you haven't stripped life of the wrong things. You have not simplified. 1,000 miles is intimidating when you look at it holistically. It's a long journey. But it's just a collection of steps, and well, shouldn't we find solace in the fact that anyone can take one step? It's not a game of complexity. It's a game of understanding what's in front of you. And what's in front of you is always manageable. So much of our stress stems from forgetting what that journey is made of. Whether it's a change in career, mastery of an art, some kind of personal transformation, the result we want, when looking at it from the starting line, It's too complex to understand, too many pieces stacked up. So let's break it down. Let's find the foundation. What's really there? What are the 1, 2, 3 things we need to do? What is that golden question? What matters? If you lose sight of that, then you will stumble through life. I've learned this. I've lived it. The time I take to myself every day is invaluable to me because I ask myself those 2 questions. What matters? And what are the simple steps I need to take? Right? What can I remove? I was talking about this during an interview this week. My personal growth. And one of the most important aspects has been the understanding and the zeroing in on what's important. I used to take so much pride in composing the background music to these speeches, end to end. Right? I used to love to be able to say I did it all. That was, so I thought, the great differentiator. But ultimately, I learned to take a step back and ask what matters here. What do you care about? It's the storytelling that I love. It's the impact. And let's be real, no one cares who wrote the background music. It's holistically, how does the piece make you feel, right? And this understanding allowed me to cut away, license the music, save 2 days a week, acquire clarity, and realize my goal is not to be Mozart. My journey is to be one of the great communicators, storytellers of our time, and if a day goes by where I'm not taking a little step towards that, it's the wrong move. Small example in the grand scheme of things, but right on point. It's the power in understanding what matters that makes a difference, that allows you to grow, evolve. And I'm confident that this not only applies to long-term pursuits, but also our challenging times, the dark moments, the periods of uncertainty and discontent. Same concept. Where do you want to be, and how do you get there? What's the simple thing you can do to close that gap? Because you are never helpless. You can always do something. And my friends, those little somethings ultimately evolve into everything. And when we put our phone away, step beyond the noise, spend time with ourselves, we can see how much of life is running in place. Stacking and stacking pieces that aren't even part of the masterpiece we're trying to assemble. If you want answers, start with the understanding that they're buried under mountains of things you don't need. So cut away. Cut away the people and places and things that convolute your story. Cut away the exhaustion of time that provides no value in return. Cut away the thoughts that make life more complex than your journey from where you are to where you'd like to be. As you stand right now, you have everything you need, and there's nothing greater than that, nothing more powerful than that understanding. So why not step outside the complexity that you've manufactured, that you're living in, into a world of clarity, simplicity, and capture what matters.